On August 1st we fly to London for a cruise to Iceland. We will start with 2 days in London before embarking from Tilbury. The first port will be the Shetland Islands, another day at sea to reach Abbey in Iceland, Reykjavik, Ísafjörður and Akureyri. On the return we will stop at the Danish Faroe Islands, Orkney Islands in Scotland, Edinburgh, Tyne before ending the cruise back at the London Cruise Terminal in Tilbury to fly home. This will be our 5th cruise on the Aegean Odyssey. We leave Kirkwall in the Orkney Islands under skies that promise rain. A gannet rides the strong wind just ahead of the ship's bow, as if to show us the way. The ship arrives in the port of Leith, which serves Edinburgh. The mooring area is actually above sea level, protecting it from tides and storms, and requiring a passage up in a large lock. Berthed in the same harbour is the Royal Yacht Britannia, which was decommissioned in 1997 after serving the Queen for 44 years. It is now a tourist attraction. Bus ride will take us to the Edinburgh Castle for our Royal Mile excursion. Going through some of the city, we do notice that most of the buildings are the same drab grey colour, somewhat all in the same style.
It was only absorbed within the city of Edinburgh in 1920. We're actually just coming up to what was the boundary between Leith and Edinburgh. If you start looking to your right, on the next corner you'll see the spire of a church there. This is Holyrood's church.
The Conan Doyle, the iconic British pub serving the city for 150 years, and a better picture of it. The bus will drop us off with our guide close to the Edinburgh Castle. After climbing up to it, we will walk the Royal Mile to the pass of Holyroodhouse. The black rock promontory upon which stands the castle has been the location of fortifications since the Stone Age. The current castle of Scottish kings and queens dates back to the 11th century. Queen Margaret died there in 1093. A chapel built by her son, King David I, was built around 1130 and is Scotland's oldest standing building. Through the years, the castle has been used as a military fortress and a royal residence. One of the first points of interest is, appropriately enough, the Scotch whisky experience, where one can see the largest collection of Scotch whisky in the world. Old and famous buildings line the street, and some have built covered and enclosed balconies to observe parades well protected from the elements. Our guide takes us through narrow tunnels and passages on the sides of the main street to many courts and squares. In one square is the interesting Writers' Museum and its unusual external cylindrical staircase. Back on the main walk, we approach a large cathedral, St. Giles. We are also in the middle of the Fringe festival. It is the largest art festival in the world and is held each August. It lasts some 25 days and was in full swing around High Street. A street pizza vendor features haggis pizza on his menu. In the square in front of the cathedral stands the equestrian statue of King Charles II. Built in 1685, it is the oldest lead statue in the UK. King Charles II was King of Scotland between 1649 and 1651. In 1660, he ruled as King of Scotland, England and Ireland until his death in 1685. The Mercat Cross is a market cross. The original was erected around 1365 and the current cross was built in 1882. The white unicorn at the top is the national animal of Scotland. We are now in the last quarter of the Royal Mile walk, approaching the Scottish Parliament buildings. This unusual building is the Museum of Edinburgh, set in a maze of 16th century historic buildings. Across from the Scottish Parliament building, the Palace of Holyroodhouse derives its name from the old Abbey, which was a church of Holyrood, Scottish for Holy Cross. The palace is the official residence of the British monarch in Scotland. The Queen used to spend 1 week there at the beginning of each summer. The Abbey was founded in 1128 at the order of King David I of Scotland. The palace was built between 1501 and 1505 by King James IV. James IV was married in the Abbey to Margaret Tudor in 1503. The white unicorn, the national animal of Scotland. The palace has beautiful gardens, but weather and time did not allow much time to visit. We have a short walk to our waiting bus to get us back to the ship. Leaving the harbour, the ship is guided in a narrow lock by tugboats. She will be lowered back to sea level for the crossing to the last port of call, the Port of Tyne, serving Newcastle upon Tyne.
Oh, dramatic, isn't it? This? All very dramatic.
Leaving Edinburgh, we have a good view of the Edinburgh Castle in the distance, dominating the landscape. In the morning, the Aegean Odyssey sails in the mouth of the Tyne River towards the Port of Tyne. A large cruise ship, the Marella Discovery, has already disgorged her some 1900 passengers for their daily excursion. Our excursion today will focus on the evidence of Roman presence in Great Britain, specifically the ruin of Hadrian's Wall. We will start at the Caulfield's Quarry, drive back to the Roman fort at Chester's, and then Corbridge. The bus goes through Newcastle upon Tyne on its way to our first stop. Julius Caesar first invaded England in 55 BC, but the conquest of England by the Romans became a fact about 100 years later, between 44 and 50 current era. Construction of the wall was started in 122 current era, following a visit by the Roman Emperor Hadrian. The wall goes from sea to sea, east-west, 73 kilometers long. It was designed and built to protect the conquered British territory from the barbarians in the north. The first stop is the Mile Castle located at Caulfield's Quarry. The Romans built the wall with a mile castle, a garrison post, every mile. This is likely the outline of the Caulfield's Mile Castle. The wall was typically between 5 and 8 meters high. It was 3 meters thick, which allowed for a pathway on the top. England was part of the Roman Empire until about 400 AD. Over centuries following, many stones were removed for the construction of other structures. Next stop at Chester's Roman fort was much more impressive. We walked through the large area to various points of interest. John Clayton, a wealthy lawyer and scholar, inherited a large house on the property in 1832. Curious about ancient remains on his front lawn, he started excavating in 1840 and spent his life discovering and preserving the ancient treasures buried on his estate. The bathhouse was discovered well after the main fort, while digging a new drainage ditch closer to the river. The fort was built about 124 current era. All that remains from these large structures are the lower levels of the foundations. The west gate was flanked by 2 towers. The fort was occupied by a cavalry garrison of some 500 men. They lived in barracks close to their horses. The emblem of the garrison was a wild boar, found on a number of carved stones. The fort remained active to protect the section of the wall until the Romans left Britain in the 5th century. A group in period costumes chat about what life in the fort may have been like. A large crossbow is on display. The commandant had his own house, which appears to have been roomy. It had its own bathroom and included workshops. Bene lava, have a good bath. The bathhouse, discovered years after the main fort, was excavated from layers of silt. It is the best preserved Roman bathhouse in the whole of Britain. The black opening is a stoke hole, where wood would be loaded to stoke the fires, heating both air and water. The bathhouse was an elaborate structure with multi-levels and rooms for the various bathing rituals of the Romans. The heart of the fort included a large hall for religious and official ceremonies, trials, receiving orders from the commanding officer. Across the hall, the shrine held effigies of the gods, and steps led to the treasury. an underground strong room where soldiers believed their pay was kept, protected by the gods above. The key role of the cavalry garrison was the protection of the frontier in this area, especially the bridge over the North Tyne River. A small museum has been built on the site, preserving various artifacts discovered during excavations. The town of Corbridge was the scene of stormy events. It was a trading centre during the Roman occupation. In 796, the King of Northumbria was slain there. 100 years later, the King of Denmark defeated the British and Scots armies. It was burned down 3 times. The bakery and pastry shop was extremely appetizing. I seem to recall that we did purchase some of these frangipans. The Vicar's Palais was built about 1300, a fortified vicarage used until the 17th century. The bowlines are still tight and will soon be released for departure. The ship is leaving the port in the afternoon, cruising down the estuary of the Tyne for a day at sea to return to our starting point, the cruise terminal of London in Tilbury, and finish our cruise. The ship is underway and the deck crew is coiling and securing all the lines which held the ship at dockside. Fishing boat has decided to take the same route to get to the sea, sailing ahead of the Aegean Odyssey. It moves somewhat slower and the captain blows the warning horn every 4 or 5 minutes to no avail. As the ship slowly leaves Tynemouth, we see the ruins of the Tynemouth Priory and Castle. First settlements of this area date back to about 750 BC. The castle is the burial ground for Northumbria kings since about 800 CE. The current ruins date from fortification added in about 1400. Henry VIII used and extended the fortifications in 1545 as a military base for his war against Scotland. In the morning of our last day on the ship, the skies are getting blue and the temperature is back to the late summer range. A lone gannet is still with the ship, but seagulls are now in large numbers as they escort the Aegean Odyssey back to the cruise terminal in Tilbury. We approach the estuary of the Thames and London in thickening fog.